Dear listener, sorry about any confusion. The first book is called Kush Sovereignty, Black Righteousness, and I have it listed on the site form to keep up with my content and to remember the language. I have it listed, English BR1, which means English language, Black Righteousness chapter 1 and the title of that chapter. Book 2 is listed, Kush Sovereignty 2, Black Love English BL1. Book 3, A Book Sigain, The Other Side of Nowhere, which will be out next month, will be listed a Kush Sovereignty 3, English a Book 1. And lastly, Book 4, IAM Kush will be, Kush Sovereignty 4, English Kush 1. I hope this helps, and again, I'm sorry for the confession. Also, please help me by hitting the thumb up button and sharing this with family and friends on Facebook or any other platform you use. It will help me build up my channel and allow me to put more content out a better video. Please let me if you see any error. I am doing all this work myself, and sometimes when I'm tired, I mess up. Chapter 13, Jala and Aneya. Wanyénye que vu and Queen's twins Jala and Aneya grew up as warriors and were trained intergiftedly. Jala loved animal, and Aneya had a great passion for music and the art. She was also a talented dancer. By the age of 10, both twins had mastered their gift. Wanyénye que vu and Queen's family grew well. Their first set of twins was Jala and Aneya, then they had Pili and Kamuzu, and the second set of twins was Masuda and Shabaka. Then there were Tanesu, Medjay, and A Book Sigain. Wanyénye que vu educated his children at home, and the eldest taught the youngest, and they were also sent to school. They learned about different culture and language. If we saw them interested in anything, we encouraged them into the subject as well, but most important to him, he taught them his people's history as well. One day, when Wanyénye que vu was teaching the twins, he stood in front of the room. European countries were much smaller than the United States and Canada. The population of Europe did not include Russia, but it was almost twice the population of the United States, so it was more densely populated. Europe sent mostly criminal to this new world and introduced this side of the world to their greed and sickness. They took our people, made them forget who they were, and made them into a savage nation through mental and physiological means. After 400 years, they created mental and psychological zombies. They had the privilege of raping, murdering, and dehumanizing them into an unrecognizable species. Then refused to give them reparation for the disaster they created. Ironically, the African more taught them how to be civilized, and in return, they went to their country and stole their people, and those people became a day answer. Because of laziness and greed for power, our people became sad example of men. They created laws to keep our people down. They would steal, kill and rape us, men and women alike, and then say, I'm sorry, we won't do it again, and if we did the same to just one of them, they would kill us or lock us up for 20 to 30 years. The fear created in our people would seem like we would treat each other with more respect, living in that kind of hell together, but they would treat each other with such disrespect but treat their oppressor with loyalty. That was century ago, and now there's another oppressor, but I need you to remember one thing. If you remember nothing else, he say. Don't treat a trade with hate, you're not called to hate, but love one another. 9-year-old, Jala raised her hand. Pop, why is this stuff so important? We are talking about 200 years ago. Wanyénye que vu smiled and walked toward Jala, shaking his head. Jala, Jala, Jala. Aneya started looking at Jala, thinking she was in trouble. Wanyénye que vu took a seat in front of them. Why do we read the Torah? Some of our history were 200 years before that. Baby, history is in the Torah. Why do we learn anything? We learn for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So, learn from your mistake or repair them. You see, they lied to our people and told us that Europeans were the pioneer of early human civilization. They lied at every chance they could get. For example, when Ethiopians defeated the well-armed Italian army. Newspapers in the UK and USA reported that the Ethiopians were white, so the people wouldn't know that Wakatilian defeated them. Evidence showed that half of humanity's recorded history had passed before anyone in Europe could even read and write. The religious priest in Egypt began keeping a record a far back à 4000 to 3000 BC, compared to 2000 years later, when Homer's poem were still being handed down orally within the confines of the Greek city-states. Sometime after 3000 BC, when the Pharaoh of Egypt built their first world-renowned pyramid, Europeans were piling up nothing more than mountains of ruby ships. History revealed that famous well-known Greeks and Europeans, whom we studied their history and writing, learned at the feet of Egyptian scholars along the Nile Valley, Kemet. Thales was one of the first Greek students to receive training under Egyptian priests. Even Plato recorded Thales was schooled in Egypt under the tutelage of the priest. Yes, even Plato was a student at the Temple of Wase for 11 years, Aristotle for 13 years, Socrates for 15 years, Euclid for almost 11 years, Pythagoras for 22 years, and Hippocrates studied there for 20 years. Honestly, all of them attended Wase. Diodorus, Solon, Thales, Archimede, and Euripide. Wanyénye que vu kniled in front of Jala, it took 40 years to graduate from Wase, meaning none of the so-called Greek scholars ever graduated, they are considered dropout. Many people took that the famous phrase "man know thyself" was initially written and spoken by Socrates, the Greek philosopher. However, ancient Egyptians were the first to write those words down on the outside of their temple in the Nile Valley. The terms eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die, were assigned to Socrates, but it was Imhotep. In fact, the first Olympic Games held in Olympia, Greece, were not in reward of sportsmanship, physical strength, or brinkmanship. Instead, it was public ceremonial worship by the Greeks of the African god, Ammon. Most European gods were of African descent and were given European names. The Greeks gave the African god Ammon the name of Zeus and called Jupiter, by the Romans. Imhotep had this name changed to Asclepius by the Greeks and Aesculapius by the Romans. Also, while I'm thinking about it, the greatest contribution of the Egyptian Nile Valley to the world was its excellent educational system. In the Kemet educational system, the ultimate aim was for a person to become one with God, to become like God or to become godlike through the revision of one's own nature of how God is revealed in the person. This was one of the highest endowments a family could give a son in those days. When the boys, for back then, it was for boys only. But when the boys got into the temple or Grand Lodge, they were expected to study for 40 years in subjects such as grammar, arithmetic, rhetoric and dialectic, geometry, astronomy, music, architecture, masonry, carpentry, engineering, sculpture, metallurgie, agriculture, mining, forestry, art and magic. Now you know why education is important to me well, Jala. If you don't know the truth, Anion will create Ali, and you'll easily believe it. Wanyénye que vu stood up and returned to the front of the room. Is it right to say that Egypt was truly the cradle of civilization? By grooming European scholars and teaching the world the true essence of civilization. You see, no tutor learning is alien to Africa. No one can erase the historical contribution Egypt has given to the world. The African man and woman brought the light of civilization to this world. Wanyénye que vu flipped through a few pages of a book, et had on his desk, here we go for your assignment. The twins sighed a Wanyénye que vu continued, Marco Polo, visiting the Pandian kingdom, said to have been the darkest men, the most highly esteemed and considered better than the other who are not so dark. In truth, these people portrayed God and idol a black and their devils a white as snow. They say that God and all the saints are black, and the devils are white. More than 2,000 years before the foundation of Greece and Rome, pro-and industry black men and women known as the Dravidians erected a powerful civilization in the Indus Valley. African kings in India drove the region's commerce, culture, and belief system from those origins. Dr. Clyde Winters, who wrote Afrocentrism, Myth or Science? Saïd, Ethiopian have very intimate relation with Indian. Before the Middle Ages, the Ethiopian ruled much of India. These Ethiopian were called the Naga. It was the Naga who created Sanskrit. Sanskrit was the ancient Indo-European language of India. The Hindu scripture and classical Indian epic poem are written and from which many northern Indian or Indic language come. The earliest mention of the Naga appear in the Ramayana, they are also mentioned in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, we discover that the Naga had the capital city in the Deccan and other cities spread between the Jumna and Gange early à 1300 BC. The Dravidian classic, the Shilapatikaram, clarified that the first great kingdom of India was Naganadu. The Naga probably came from Kushpin, Ethiopia since the painted were the greatest seller of the ancient world. In the Kemetic inscription, the painted port of Utkuli, Amo, and Tekaru, which correspond to Aduli, Amazon, and Tigre. Even the legends of India revere the black race that lay the foundation of their civilization, and the holiest books of India also affirm that Enlightenment came from Ethiopia. The first god of India was a dreadlocked black man called Shiva. One unique vu took a deep breath, that was a mouthful, but he said all of that to say this. I want you to write a report on other black ruler from India. Now, class dismissed. 2 weeks had passed, and their assignments were due. One unique view walked into the class. Okay, girls, today we are going to do your report, and then we'll learn some fighting technique. Jala, you love animals so much. Let's see if they can fight alongside you in battle, and Aneya, we will incorporate some dance move in your fighting skill. Now, I can't dance, but maybe we can work together on that. Jala rushed to the front of the class, and Aneya followed and stood next to her. Jala cleared her throat. Okay, Shazada Koja Barbak was an Ethiopian who conquered the Bengal kingdom and established the Apshi dynasty. He was a Sidi. We also know the Sidi as Sidi, Shidi, Swahili, and Apshi. They were an ethnic group that inhabited India and Pakistan. The Sidi are members descended from the Bantu people of the East African region. One of his own assassinated Shazada Koja Barbak shortly after coming to power. The man who took his place was Malik Andil Khan Sultan. Upon assuming the throne, Malik Andil Khan changed his name to Saifuddin Abul Muzaffar Firuz Shah. The end. Jala quickly took a seat with a smile on her face. After turning a few pages, Aneya stood up and placed her note to her side. Jamal al-Din Yakut began his rise to power in Delhi à Apshi. Apshi were African and Abyssinian Slav in pre-British India. The name derives from the Arabic word Abash through its Persian form. Such Slavs were employed by the chiefs of Muslim India, especially in the Deccan. They were believed to have great physical prowess and ability and a lack of personality, which promoted loyalty. Many Apshi rose to high office, and some became independent. The most famous of them was Malik Ambar of Ahmadnagar, who defied the Mughal, who controlled much of South Asia during this time. ABSH in Western India, the Sidi of Janjira, commanded the fleet of the Bijapur Sultan and became independent chiefs. They defied the Maratha and transferred their allegiance to the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. They accepted British supremacy and maintained their state until it was integrated with the Bombay state of the new Indian Union. It was one of many enslaved Africans of East African descent frequently employed by Muslim monarchs as mercenary and royal security teams. Shortly after his employment began, the then reigning sovereign Queen Razia, the first female monarch of Delhi, took a liking to him. They promoted him to the royal courtier, and later rose to occupy the important post of superintendent of the royal stable. She awarded him the honorable title Amiral Kail or Amir of Horse, and later the Mushiger Amiral Umara or Amir of Amir. The Turkish nobility also had dealing in the region at the time. Al-Readi resented a woman ruled by the Muslim noble and cleric. Queen Razia's relationship with Aslav, both considered racially inferior to the Turkish noble who ruled the Sultanate, alienated the nobility and cleric and soon provoked open rebellion and conspiracy. H.S. Ater eventually killed of Jamal al-Din Yakut. Aneya started singing and waved her on across both of her shoulder. Shake the Ater off, shake them Ater off. Jala interrupted, logging, there was another Ginamed Malik Sarwar. Malik was used all back then, and it's the Semitic term translating to king recorded in East Semitic and Arabic and AMLK in Northwest Semitic during the Late Bronze Age. But, Malik Sarwar was also described as Abashi and became the governor of Jaunpur, a sultanate close to Delhi. Under the title of Malik Shark or King of the East. He captured Jaunpur province. According to the history of medieval India, Malik Sarwar received the title of Kajai Jahan, was appointed as the governor of Jaunpur, and received his title of Malik Shark from Sultan Nasiruddin Mahmud Shah de Tughluq. He established himself an independent ruler, took the title of Atabak Yazam, and suppressed the rebellion in Etawah, Kwal, and Kanauj. He also broke Kara, Awad, Sandila, Dalmo, Baresh, Bihar, and Tirut under his control. The Rai of Jajnagar and the ruler of Lakhnauti acknowledged his authority and sent him many elephants. After his death, he was succeeded by his adopted son, Malik Karanfal, who took the title of Mubarak Shah. Malik Sarwar and his 5 successor Malik Mubarak Kranfal, Ibrahim Shah, Mahmud Shah, Bikankan, and Hussein Shah, are called Sharki kings who ruled the kingdom of Jaunpur for a little less than a century. They were all black Indo-African called Abashi or the Ethiopian in India. This was the period of peace and prosperity in the history of Jaunpur, with remarkable achievements in the fields of art, architecture, education, trade, and commerce. Malik Ambar, one of the most famous among the Indo-Africans. Aneya interrupted, H.S. original name was Shambu, born in Harar, Ethiopia. After he arrived in India, he raised an army and achieved tremendous power in the West Indian realm of Ahmadnagar. A brilliant diploma, tactician, and administrator. Late, he broke away from Bijapur and built an independent mercenary army of over 1,500 African, Arab, and local Dakhani men. Joining the state of Ahmadnagar, he imprisoned King Murtaza II, naming himself a regent minister. Ambar promoted minority of various ethnic groups to critical position and implemented financial, educational, and agricultural reform. One unique view was pro-office doctor and said with a smile, yes, there were many other powerful Abishi in the political scene of India. Chingis Khan, the Prime Minister to Nizam Mulk Bani, King of Ahmadnagar. These men are just a few of the Abyssinian, Abazi, Ethiopian, and Dravidian ruler, leader, and with men who shaped India. Yes, all were of African origin. Now, let's go outside and fight. The twins ran outside, they enjoyaient challenging one another, and one unique vue enjoyait it well. Late det. Night, a queen slept on the other side of the bed, one unique vue grabbed his pen and pad, for it had been a long time since he had written anything. Route. The sun shine. That shine, from that sun, are called ray. Those rays fall and scatter across this planet called Earth. In a form that are nutrients, that this planet feed on. Now. Everything here on this planet need these nutrients. From the birds, to the bees. Flowers, trees, and seed. Light reflect this energy, darkness absorb it. And this has been the dilemma. When the seed are planted, what start it as growth? What make it grow? Root. Root form and grow, that is the beginning of your glow. And from that scatter. That ray. Yes, that shine glows, and you grow. Some plants have stem, and some etim, later down the road, some of them stem become branch. But that is for those of us who are plant, because you have your trees. Which are plan, but on higher degree. Another story, another time. This light is spoke about early HS to go through this same process as the darkness. But it's hard, for light under darkness. But that is not what I'm talking about at this time. Again, another story, another time. Right now, it's those root. Root help you grow, without it, you just won't glow. They separate us by your root, teach us to forget our past. This is what you should have gotten from those branch, from those stem, all you got was the dirt from the earth. Should we just die without root? No. Have forgotten the scate from the ray, that ras from that shine that cause you to glow? Remember. Light reflect this energy, darkness absorb it along a your acid. So, praise your family, raise your family. Be a family become root, that bring forth a tree. When the twins were 15, Friedrich got word from home that a dear relative had died and asked Wanyinyekevu and Queen if they were interested in seeing Botswana, Africa. They took the twins along, leaving the rest behind for Aunt Isabel, who was happy to watch. Abuxigan was the youngest, being just a year old. Aneya was so excited when she found out she was going to Africa with Friedrich. She started dancing and singing by an ancien artiste named Genuine Antiled, 550 watts, 5.50 watts. 5.50 watts. That's my address. That's my address. Jala was always playing with the animal, and they seemed to listen to her every word, naming them unusual and different names. On the day of their departure, she asked Friedrich. Can we bring an animal back? Friedrich smiled. Did you know that the Ethiopian soldiers used lions, bees, wasps, and elephants in wars against colonized? And Ethiopia has never been colonized. They trained these creatures to fight their enemy. Jala smiled. Of course I do, Uncle Free. Friedrich shook his head, smiled, and looked at Wanyinyekevu. Of course, she does. Jala looked and shouted. Uzizao. They both said together, never forget. Friedrich surprised the group on the day of their departure. Ive made outfit for our trip. Please, take this and put them on. They are our traditional dress for my country, and by the way Jala, these are not real animal skins. Friedrich and Wanyinyekevu were lion skins caled at Chega, then draped with a carrosse, a rugor blanket usually made from animal litter, a skin cap, sandal, and belt tie. Belt of tie were allowed only for warriors, copper wire necklace, bead string, and armlet. Queen wore a kiba with a beautiful Moses and then was covered with a carrosse and draped with colorful necklace, bracelet, ring, and earring. Jala and Aneya wore Moses and kiba. We must make our route where there are fewer abenians, Friedrich said, pulling out a map on his tablet. We'll go a far south our territory allows and then do east making stop here and here, depending on the girls. We might go here. Wanyinyekevu trusted Friedrich's decision, and they did on their journey, leaving Jom and Obe in charge until their return. They finally arrived at their destination after 3 days and parked their skycraft just a few miles away, for the elders of Botswana were like the elders of Talula, and they didn't want to frighten them. As they walked towards the village, they were met by a group of warriors who saw the skycraft. We come in peace, I am Friedrich, son of Edwin. To pay homage to his sister Ka of Pomage. A warrior from the back came to the front. You can't be Friedrich, son of Enna, for he has the face of a crow and the body of a giraffe. And then the warrior ran to Friedrich and embraced him with tears in his eyes. Friedrich embraced him back with tears in his eyes. Nephew, he shouted. Friedrich said unto his nephew, how old are you? 36, now, et replié. Friedrich smiled. You're just a ugly now you were then. His nephew looked. You would know, for everyone said we look like twins. Wanyinye que vu and his family loged, and Wanyinye que vu said, you to do look alike. Friedrich introduced Wanyinye que vu and his family a day walked the rest of the way to the village. The women wear black dress, and the men wear black hat and a piece of black or blue cloth with a matching necklace and bracelet according to their custom. Friedrich took a minute to explain to Jala and Aneya about his culture. When Someon dies in Botswana, the Botswana believe they become ancestral spirit whom they praise. These ancestral spirit have the power to cause sickness and bad luck for the living. To prevent the spirit from causing harm, their family make sure the funeral properly honor their memory. Typically, when an elderly family member dies, it's considered a natural death. Aneya interrupted Friedrich. But when a young person dies, it's considered the cause of witchcraft, evil spirit, or unhappy ancestor. Friedrich said. Wanyinye que vu us talked you well, Aneya said. This we talked ourselves when you told us we were coming. Friedrich was impressed. Well, you are right, and we made it in time for the night vigil, which is tomorrow evening until sunrise, so get you some rest. Morne Peter respect, pray, sing, and give speech to honor the deceased. Friedrich walked to the front, grabbing an old, torn book. You want to read this? It's a story we repeated for century on special family occasion, and this is suited for family and love. It was first written by your ancestor, Pastor Evelyn Kelama, over a 2,000 years ago when they celebrated Christmas. My great-aunt taught me the meaning and the purpose of family. She would read this to me from a kid until the day he left home and this book. Holding the book above his shoulder. Was sincere. Eclaired his throat and wiped his tears. My first exposure to what love looked like. I recall from my childhood, they beat the odd a black couple despite the devastating effect of 250 years of slavery preceding them, 50 years of Jim Crow following them, and 45 years of rampant discrimination following them. He grew up not in a ghetto but in a close-knit community, a village. During this time, black people were still struggling to rebuild after the worst human holocaust in modern history, the wind of which were still blowing hard, carrying the debris of discrimination and destruction we are still trying to recover from. A time when black folk bonded together in tightly knit community for their safety and protection, healing, and help through extreme times. And it did take a village to raise a child. And a family to raise a nation. My grandparents epitomised strength, character, dignity, racial pride, and self-respect. They believed in a hand up, not a hand down when you were picking someone up. They we were poor by societal standard but some team didn't know because the family uni and the coping skill often made up for what we lacked in material need. The elders did all they could to protect the children from the harsh reality of a world ravaged by racial hatred and classism, and oppression all sides. But some team, reality penetrate. And some team, the need overwhelmed the effort to fill the void. And one bitterly cold winter, around the holiday of Thanksgiving and Christmas, the need was overwhelming. For our family. Work was scarce. Money too tight to mention. My grandpa, we called him Papa, was not feeling well, and walked on a cane from severe arthritis in one leg. From years of hard labor in the cotton fields and on farm, working white folk lent à sharecropper. My grandmother's name was Carrie, but affectionately called her B. Why we never knew. She called him Jimmy, but his name was James and Allman if she was irritated. It was not unusual for some team 2 or 3 family to be living under one roof. They piled on top of each other. Family tramped comfort. That winter, several of my cousins and I stayed with my grandparents while our parents were often out of town working or looking for work. It was Christmas, and we had nothing. No money for present or a tree or food. I remember. One of the few times I saw my grandmother cry. She always kept up a strong front for her family. No matter how much pain she was in. This time she couldn't hold back the tears, watching US kid watching other family on a black and white television talking about trees and presents we wanted for Christmas. One of US asked her, Mua, which was her nickname for her, are we getting a Christmas tree too? He was around 10. He remembered asking my grandma why she was crying. As usual, she wiped her tears away and tried to cover them with a smile. However, my grandfather had stood in their bedroom doorway, silently watching her cry. He didn't say anything. He just grabbed his hat and cotton that can office, one over kissed my grandma on the forehead, and said, I'll be back in a little while, B. She quickly wiped the tears she never intended for him to see and asked, Where are you going on that leg in this cold, Jimmy? You gonna be up all night. He just winked at her and said, Don't worry. I'll be back. He headed up the road, limping on that can. Hours passed. Every so often, my grandma would look outside for him. He did too. He knew she was worried. Something about your parents or grandparents coming home back then was always a comfort for US kid. We knew we'd be okay. It was almost dusk when a sleek, expensive car pulled up, and my papa got out. A white man drove. Papa called to US kid to come help. Get this bag out of the car. We excitedly ran over each other to do so. The white man he was with got out, opened the trunk, and pulled out a Christmas tree and a bag of decoration. He brought it into the yard and helped pull the dozen or so bag of grocery and gift on the porch. Papa thanked him for his help. They shook hands. The white man with the Texas size hat and a deep voice said, Welcome, Jimmy. If he gets more work for you in the future, I'll let you know. Merry Christmas to you. He got in that big expensive car and drove off. Papa turned to US and said, What is he all standing around here for? Help your grandmama get this bag and that tree in the house and get to decorating. And don't you all look in those bags either. Except the ones with the grocery. The smile on my grandma's face was priceless. This time the tears in her eyes were of joy and wonder. The writer that I am, il a chronicled that moment and that hug between them in my journal for late stories. He heard her whisper to him under the scream and shoo of me and my cousin. Old man. What you doing out there working in this cold on that leg like that? My papa gave that sly smile of his. The good Lord made away. Now, leave me alone, B. A man ain't got no pride if he can watch his family suffer and don't do nothing but if he can. She patted his chest and smiled, the way she always did when she was pleased with him. He told her he was going to walk up to a neighbor's house a minute to see if they still needed food. He watched my papa limping on that can, walking up the road in the bitter cold. It was sleeting slightly. It was a moment. Frozen in time for me, the image of a real man, a father, a grandfather, a neighbor, and a friend, who put the need of his family and daughter above his own pain. It was an image I have never forgotten. Merry Christmas and happy holiday to one and all. Closing the book, he said to the crowd. Ka inspired me to be all man for my people. With tears rolling down his face, Friedrich took a seat when Anaya got up. He would like to sing a song for my Uncle Free. She grabs Jala and plays the instrumental to a song entitled Stairway to Heaven by a classic group named The OJ. They sang the song so beautifully that the crowd stood up. Some were crying, and the rest cheered. Queen smiled, that was such a beautiful song, he didn't know you guys could sing like that. I've heard you sing phrase bunot en entier song, and Jala, Lord, he never knew. Jala blushed, and Anaya said with a smile. Thank you, we sing to Jala's animal all the time. Friedrich started crying during Aeneas' song and hid from the crowd I talked about all the time they span. With his aunt K, Bu et simply called her K, just walking with no destination. After trying to hold in his grief for so long, he broke down in tears. Jala felt his sorrow and touched Aneia. Uncle Free US. Aneia looked at Jala and said with tears, "What are we here for? Let's go." They saw Friedrich ahead of them, so they ran to him. Uncle Free, they screamed until he finally turned around, wiping his face from the tears. He just needed to take a walk. Aneia began to speak but was captivated by the view as she started looking around. Everywhere he turned, he found some of the most beautiful scenery. That sunrise make it even more beautiful. Friedrich smiled, "This is my home, Botswana, the birthplace of all modern human. Home of the Bushmen Orsan and Khoi people, which also spoke the oldest Khoisan language." The girls knew he was about to give them another history lesson but let him speak his mind and just listened. Until Europe and the rest of them came along, our official language was Setswana, however, English has crept its way in. The British called it Bechuanaland, but it was renamed Botswana. It used to be one of the poorest countries in the world and has since transformed itself into one of the world's fastest growing economy, with mining at its top resource and then technology. It was also among the hardest hit by the HIV/AIDS epidemic during that time. I wonder how did that happen? Shaking his head I continued. The country's name means Land of the Tswana, referring to the dominant ethnic group in Botswana. The term Botswana was originally applied to Tswana, which is still the case. However, it has also generally become used as demonym. Posed. A demonym is a word that identifies resident or native of a particular place, usually derived from the name of the place or that of an ethnic group. Botswana is the plural form, and Motswana is the singular form for all citizens of Botswana. The Europeans say Botswana, we say Botswana and find that word offensive. Friedrich posed. You guys probably know all this, right? They shook their head and smiled. Well, do you know that? Looking at Aneia. There was a man named Aneia, a Professor James Aneia, who was a special rapporteur for indigenous people, who? Aneia interrupted. That is the Uncle Free we know, Jala, logging, said, "Yep, just talking and talking." And they all logged. They walked a few yards farther, and they heard a sound. Jala said. That is crying. She ran to the sound, and there were two hyena cubs, one striped and the other albino. Friedrich walked up and looked around for a mother hyena. They must be lost, for it's strange for these cubs to be left alone. Jala walked up to one of the cubs and picked it up. Fireball. Friedrich said. Why do you name him, and you'll never see it again? Jala smiled. He will see him again cause I'm taking him home. Aneia picked up the other pup, ice because she's white. As they returned to the village with the puppy in their. Friedrich looked at Wanyényekevu and shook his head. You already know we have new family members, don't we? Wanyényekevu said to Friedrich, and he smiled, "Yes, you do." The end of this chapter. Please support my content by going to these links below. Visit Kush Sovereignty Store @bonfire for mug, t-shirt, and more is on ETS way. Link is in the description.